A whole bunch of privates have been telling their Mormon story after they got a nice file with the 4x6s, even the cards to send back to their family to wallpaper the neighborhoods when the Mormons are casing the neighborhoods and preying on their elderly. And Jared says, I don't know why you keep talking bad about the Mormons. And Sarge is walking past and he says, son, do you know what happened in Jonestown about 40 years ago? Do you want to be in Utah hauling out body bags because the false prophet got caught bilking little old ladies out of their life savings, or who knows what else? Check and post and file with the Mormons, hand these out, wallpaper your neighborhoods with them. But Jack is retired, and he saw a suspicious car in his neighborhood, and he called the cops up. He said, well, they're going up and down the street. It looks like they're casing the neighborhood. And of course the cops show up, find that gray car, and Jim J and Charlie M, Mormon missionaries, doing what they do, casing the neighborhoods and preying on the elderly. And they're a little indignant, they're angry, Jim and Charlie. And they tell the cops, well, we're just, doing missionary work for our religion. And yeah, the cops tell them, yeah, so was Jim Jones and Charles Manson. That didn't end well. I am Milton, son of a carpenter and married. Dad a carpenter, worked on skyscrapers. Mom Marianne, I'm the son of a carpenter. I get to tell parables, and I did some Google research today. I found out that my parable videos are making the rounds. You know how pompous, if you ever had a knock on your door, the Mormons can be. And last year, 2017, I made some funny parables about their false prophet at the time, Manson. I said, I thought we got rid of that guy long ago, and yeah, apparently they've been making the rounds because just before Thanksgiving last year, Charles Manson died, and then just after the New Year, they false prophet Manson kicked the bucket. And that's how I know, my parables get around. I'll keep passing them along, guys. Michelle and Sharon are two Mormon church princesses, and they're looking after false prophet Manson, who needs looking after because he's well up into his 90s. He's half as old as the Fraud of Faith, LDS, Latter-day Saints, the Mormon church itself. And Michelle says, Brother Manson, you haven't touched your food. He says, I'm not hungry. You haven't touched your Kool-Aid. I don't wanna. And then as Sharon says, look at this nice pillow I embroidered for you. I heart false prophet Manson. And he says, I can see it. You don't have to bring it closer. I can see it. And yeah, I made a couple of parables about, have we never seen Charles Manson and false prophet Manson of the church there in the same room, and all of a sudden they died within a month and a half. Officer Jared has stopped by to see Mrs. Moneybags, and she explains that these people keep knocking on her door. She doesn't answer, but sometimes she's out in her garden. She likes to work in her garden. She's an elderly lady with some beautiful flowers. And these folks are very arrogant and condescending and self-righteous. And she has told them, I'm a Catholic. I go to church when I can get a ride with my friends. I don't want to be on your sales route. And trouble is, Officer Jared is one of those that they call when they're missionaries, get in trouble from the city, the county, the state. And he just BS the little old lady. The Mormons, the LDS, Latter-day Saints, are in their men's meeting. Yeah, they're like their fraud of the faith sister religion, the Muslims. No gals allowed. And one of them says, you know, our missionaries are knocking on doors worldwide and they're asking, is it true Charles Manson is your false prophet? We're a laughing stock because of the son of Carpenter Mary Melton and his parable videos. And Russell Nelson says, I know how to solve things. He's a heart doctor. So he's got a broom over his shoulder in a state hospital. And yes, that little medical bag with him. And then he goes, oh, I'm not sure where the state hospital is. Then he goes back to Utah, and yes, Charles Manson dies around Thanksgiving, and false prophet Manson dies around New Year's Day. And you guessed it, that heart doctor is the new false prophet. The general is having a strategy meeting. He's explaining how they will distribute the Mormons Beware image as cards, as 4x6 photos, as bumper stickers, as t-shirts. Across America to churches, neighborhoods, civic organizations. And one of the colonels says, well, is that really necessary? I mean, they're just a church trying to do missionary work. And the general gives the colonel a mean look, and he says, well, so were Jim Jones and Charlie Manson, and Utah's a whole lot bigger than them, and yes, we're going to be the ones taking out the body bags. This video is set in the 70s, the 1970s, and as you know, the devil insists that the Mormons, the LDS, Latter-day Saints, spend 3 long hours each Sunday worshiping him and his lies. And as part of that, they're kind of like their sister fraud of the faith, the Muslims, in that the women go off in their own little set there and talk about sewing and cooking, and the men talk about, you know, in their own place, important stuff. And as they're doing that this Sunday, in the 70s, Gordon says to Tom, you know, it's shameful the way that the young people dance to Elvis's music. And Russell says, I know how to solve the problem. He picks up his medical bag. He's a doctor, and they ask him, where are you going? He says, to Tennessee. The Sarge is walking with his men, and they go in this huge warehouse full of body bags. And one of the privates says, Sarge, that Russian guy isn't getting us into something, is he? And Sarge says, oh no, son, this isn't for the military. This is in case those folks in Utah go Kool-Aid happy. You heard about Charles Manson and false prophet Manson of the LDS, Latter-day Saints, the Mormons. You heard about both of them dying within a month. If that doesn't, month and a half, I believe. If that doesn't tell you they're worried about the son of Carpenter and Mary and his truth about them, nothing will. But no, they're not for us. False Mormon prophet Russell Nelson is conducting a tour with a reporter and a senator, and he says, I am sure once you talk to Mrs. Moneybags, you'll find she's here of her own free will. And just then, Charlie M. and Jim J. run up to the false prophet and hand him a note that says Mrs. Moneybags does not want to be here. And he gets so flustered, the false prophet hands it to the note, to the senator, then quickly grabs it back and hands it back to the missionary. Yeah, guys. Utah's a whole lot bigger than Jonestown. Mark has a problem most Christians have. They're too good for their own good. And he's talking to Harry. He says, I don't know about distributing the Mormons Beware to our flock, and then have them distribute in the neighborhoods and civic organizations. I don't know, they're a church just like us, trying to promote the religion. And Harry says no, they're a cult, much bigger than Jim Jones and Charlie Manson, and we have to protect the true believers from that. So we're going to hand these out, and they should. It's the late 60s, and Russell Nelson, the current false prophet of the LDS, Latter-day Saints, proud of that title, Mormons, is out knocking on doors with Jared, and he comes to this one door, and he says, you sure do have a whole lot of long brown-haired gals around here. We got a cartoon Mormon Bible for each of them. And all of a sudden, Charlie shows up. They compliment him on that tattoo he's got above his nose, and he says, dig it, man, we don't want you around here. You come around here one more time, I don't know what I'm gonna do. And of course, Russell says, we'll be back next month. The false prophet Russell Nelson of the Mormon cult, the Latter-day Saints, the LDS, he's sitting on his porch rocking, and that's about all he can do, because he's up into his 90s. He's half as old as the Mormons cult is. And he sees some younger fellas from the Mormons show up, and he says, what's wrong? He's the son of a carpenter, Mary Melton, making parable videos about me. Oh, I make the funny stuff, the serious stuff. And I made some about Charles Manson and the previous false prophet Manson. And then it ended up with both of them dying at the end of 2017. And so Russell's a little nervous. He says, what's in the medical bag? He says, nothing. And Russell learned a thing or two from the Doomsday Cult. He's got his Nikes on. He outdistances the younger folk. Manson is a-whining again. Why are they persecuting us? We, the Mormons, LDS, Latter-day Saints, proud of that title, we're just trying to promote our religion. Why are they persecuting us? Oh, getting the truth out about you is not persecution. Look for those Mormons Beware on the Vote Truth there, among other places. Print them out, wallpaper your neighborhood when you see them. The Mormons casing your neighborhood. Meanwhile, as Manson's hanging by his tail, Jim Jones hanging right next to him by his tail says, yeah, well, Manson, so was I, just trying to promote that religion. Then the devil comes along and, pokes both of them with a pitchfork. Jake is checking into a fancy hotel, and the clerk says, well, it's a really nice room, but there might be a little smoke damage. Nelson stayed in there last night. And Jake smiles. He says, Willie Nelson was in that room? And the clerk says, no, the false prophet Russell Nelson. Yeah, the 90-something-year-old guy that's half as old as the Fraud of the Faith, LDS, Latter-day Saints, proud of that title, the Mormons. They're very big smokers. You see them around here a lot, around me and the Great Wall of Evil. And let me explain some Great Wall of Evil tactics. They have the noise from down below from them. They're Mormon doggies to distract, so I didn't take a a sunset photos, and now for Tommy, they're distracting. Charles Manson that says, "Does this thing have a file in it?" And Jim J hands him some cake between the bars and says, "Not exactly." Short time later, back in Utah, the false Mormon prophet Manson is being given some cake by Charlie M., LDS, Latter-day Saint missionary. And he's kind of old. He says, "Is it my birthday?" And yes, Jim J says, "Not exactly." Then both of those missionaries go to see Russell Nelson. They say that Manson embarrassment is over with. You're the false prophet now. Russell Nelson is doing a rare interview. Yes, he's the false prophet of the Mormons. Latter-day Saints, LDS, proud of that title. Doing an interview with Barbara and Connie. And he says, "I don't know why they're persecuting us. We're just a simple religion." Yes, he's half as old, literally half as old as his Father Faith Mormons, up into his 90s. We're knocking on doors to promote our faith. And the Connie says, "Well, so was Jim Jones and Charles Manson." And a lot of folks don't like the case in their neighborhood where they're hard at work and the only ones there are the elderly you're preying on. So Frank is at boot camp. And it's the usual stuff, obstacle course, disassemble, reassemble, rifles and other things. But he asks Sarge about the new things he hasn't seen. It's, loading body bags onto trucks. And Sarge explains, well, it's the Mormons. They're much bigger than Jim Jones and Charles Manson were. Much bigger, and yeah, we want to be prepared when they start passing out that Kool-Aid. Charles M. calls Jim J. into the room. They're both Mormon, LDS, Latter-day Saint missionaries. And Jim J. says, "Where'd you dig him up?" And Charlie says, "Oh, the Mideast. I thought we could use some fresh blood at the top of our fraud of faith." And Jim J. says, "But he's just a skeleton." "I know, but he does look more lifelike than Russell Nelson, the current false prophet." And what's that in his hand? It's a gold coin. "Oh my dad, they have dug up Judas." And as they try to take that gold coin out, the devil puts bless on that new false prophet. Two people are walking through a wilderness, and one says to the other, "Did you ever think about joining the Mormons, becoming LDS, Latter-day Saint?" And the other one laughs, this kind of maniacal Chinese laugh, and he says, "Oh no, those Mormons are a dangerous cult, not like us. They're desperate, they're bizarre, they're off in their own little world." Then Jim Jones says, "Let's go meet that senator and reporter. Remember to hand out these to protect the Christians, the flock." from the Mormon wolves, the devil. Ralph has taken Rita to see his grandma. And at Grandma's house, she's burning some mistletoe. And Ralph explains to Rita it's a Christmas tradition. And Rita says, burning mistletoe is a Christmas tradition? And he explains, yeah. Grandma used to have it, on her porch. But then one day she looked out a few years back and saw Mormon missionaries kissing underneath it. So she burns the mistletoe every year as a new Christmas tradition. And Rita says, oh, you're lucky that's all? See, so I hear those rock chuckers do much more than that. Remember checking Post and 5 and hand out those Mormons beware. Remember when you see rock chuckers on your front doorstep, make a documentary of the character, and they've got a whole lot of rock chuckers in Spectrum. So when Spectrum comes to take part in America's Hijacked Lifelines in person, making that noise intentionally to annoy. It's been going on for 20 minutes. It's very intentional. It is the pod people, Latter-day Saints, the Mormons, rock chucker stuff, what they are, what they're constantly referred to around here. And look at that. That's Lori the devil with her rock chucker husband, being that obvious. And yeah, backing up for 20 minutes to let me and everyone else know it's very intentional.